Aya Goswami is a PhD from the University of Mumbai, is an assistant professor at the Department of History, KJ Somaya College, University of Mumbai, India, specializing in maritime history of the west coast of India and the Western Indian Ocean. Her major publications include The Call of the Sea, Kutchi Traders in Muscat and Zanzibar, 18,000 to 1880, Globalization Before the Time, Gujarati Merchants from Kutch, 2016, and the Trans-Regional Trade and Traders Situating Gujarat in the Indian Ocean, 2018. A much talked about oceanic sphere, Indian Ocean and the Pacific these days. It'll be interesting to see how you work on the
I've
history.
I've tried to. Thanks. And thanks for this introduction, and thank you team Mosai and Kizuna India and Professor Sushila for pushing me to this transoceanic arena and try to connect a number of nodal or nodes of capitalism. That is what I'm trying to talk today about. I hope I can get the screen because I have switched on the screen here. Can switch. Done? Okay. 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 I don't have interesting slides though, but I would like to engage your attention or your understanding with how do we try to develop the broader picture. And for that, when we talk about transoceanic trading networks of Japan and Bombay, and the idea of capitalism, my entire focus is on rethinking on it. Rethinking because there are some set notions about Asian capitalism, or Asian capitalism is mostly, if you see in scholarly engagements, have been underrated or not much dealt with. There are three of them whom I have selected, and I try to give the timeline also of theirs so that we understand the same period I'm talking about. Max Weber, you all know, refers to European capitalism as modern and sophisticated, and argues that the idea of capitalism in Europe was well developed because it could meet a range of imperative preconditions of capitalism. Those preconditions include rationalistic approach in accounting and usage of technology, modes of production, markets, legal system, access to labor, and commercialization of economic life. This is what Max Weber tried to define the idea of European capitalism. And in that context, he did not see Asia as such. And when we come to the other one, Gunnar Myrdal, he talks about, conventional religious beliefs and traditional socio-political institutions as a hindrance to South Asian growth story. So we being traditional or over religious perhaps, and we couldn't focus more on the ideas of commercialization is what is his argument. We, in the sense I'm talking about Asian context here, and context here. So geographic and ecological advantages of China, for example, did not use correctly despite the political unity and edge over other Asian states. This is according to George Diamond. He is still alive, so I've not written his timeline. And so, the idea is what is missed, in such discourses is the idea of long during evolution of Asian capitalism over the centuries. And like for example, if I start with the early modern period or much before that also, I have number of examples, antiquities also, I can take you down to Sultanate period also, to the Mughal period. But let's not go that backward and talk about Surat and Bombay were the nodes of not only Asian but European capitalism, is what I'm arguing. And you would like to, I mean, know more about it, that how did it transpire. So we'll get to know this in my following discussion. Though late joiner, Japan rapidly industrialized after the Meiji Revolution, as you know, how it is being now discussed over the 2 days sessions. Let's quickly move on to first East Africa. I'm taking you directly to East Africa. I'm not taking you anywhere else, thinking about why not, transoceanic. So let's see how these transoceanic nodes are getting connected. Here, the demand is of textile. East Africa demands textile, right? There are two stakeholders, New England merchants from Salem and other ports of Boston, and you can talk about the entire of East Coast of America. And then you have Kutchi traders from Kutch, that is Kutch, Muscat, that is Kutchis in Muscat and Kutchis in Bombay. Okay, so I'm talking about those traders. They are Bhatias, Khojas, Boras, Maimans. There are a number of community identities to them. And their product is Kaniki. Their prime product is Kaniki. I'll give you one photograph. I can show you one photograph of that. And then you have Merikani. Merikani is actually distortion of Americani. Americani, that is from America. Okay, and that had captured the markets. There was this American domination, you can see from the slide. The 1840s and 1850s, game changer was here, American Civil War. There are many game changers, so we are coming to number one. Here, there is a shift in the textile trade dynamics. Bombay's advantage, because Bombay takes over this position, which was wobbly for America right now. And then you have a bubble buster in 68, because America comes back and the prices rapidly crashed. There are numerous financial crises, which you can, if you read, there is one journal itself, which was, I think, some silver jubilee year celebration of Bombay textile industry itself gives you the range of ideas or causes or the factors responsible for, factors responsible for this bubble buster, and what kind of financial crisis they faced. So by somehow, those authors, they say that 1868 normalcy was restored, and you have, say, for example, J.N. Tata invested in oilseed, two new mill settlement set up in Chinchpokli, where Alexandra Mill was founded. So here, the investors are now coming back. This mill was sold in 1872 at enormous profit. Between 1875 and 90, the textile industry was moderately prosperous. So this is the timeline I'm giving you. But that doesn't mean the now scene is going to change for Bombay, because you have, in between you can see Africa here, and the cloth which I'm talking about. And then this is the pitloom of Bombay. And now because we come to the time of 1890s, the downswing starts. Why? When Bombay was doing so well, of course, it crashed for a while. There was a share mania. There were many things happening in Bombay stock market. Speculation also, was going haywire. But here, you see the downswing is such, which is quite for a long time, you can see it. And I would call it not only the downswing, but the fluctuations. So let's see the fluctuation. Out of the 97 mills, 13 mills scrapped out or burned down in 1895, 1915. And by 1926, 39, 15 mills were scrapped in the period. So by the 1940s, Bombay had only 69 mills. The pace at which, the newer mills were setting up on old or ones demolished affords a true indication of trading circumstance of that time. And now, there is this idea also of the American Civil War, which led to an exponential rise. You can see the rise was 75 million sterling, led to the formulation of wild and fantastic get-rich schemes. Actually, there was a rush for it, so all of which collapsed abruptly like House of Cards. And you see, it was because of this, the trying 1890s. This was a time where number of things are happening. Colonial legislation, according to those authors of this journal, they say that never in history you see any legislation is coming in the way in such detrimental way. 1892 strikes and riots. We all know how that time was developing into. Then 1893, the mints were closed, plague broke out, famine, all of these back to back, impacting the textile industry, and Indian business with China, Japan came to a standstill as the exchange dropped by 12% to 15%, and normalcy of 1903 Bombay seaborne trade could just come only by great difficulty, you can say. But that doesn't mean that normalcy was for good. Again, if you look at all of these factors, the damage was done. And the loss of yarn trade with China and Japan, China was retained, but Japan was lost forever in this quest. Circumstances were like somehow they could manage China, but not with Japan. Why? Because now Japan is into some other things, right? So let's find out. So these are the statistical figures which I got it from archives, where you can see why I'm calling the tough 1890s as far as yarn export and cotton export. Both of these, you can see the figures, right? So it's like dwindling down, and the graph is accordingly building up. So you have the Japanese entry. Now, I'm now not clubbing exactly at the same time. Japanese were before that, like after Meiji Revolution, they were looking at Bombay and the groundwork was done, linkages were established. And from the 1890s, the archival records suggest that the British favored Japan with the trading concession. Now, you may ask the question, why? The question was, of course, European politics at that time, and of course, Euro-Pacific relations, which were working on different balance, especially in the backdrop of First World War, and just before the Russo-Japanese War, Anglo-Japanese treaty, which was signed, right? So the concessions were like, prior hand only. So, it is just giving the indication as of they are going to sign one alliance. And that exactly transpired, right? So a range of Japanese produce. I'm just now not focused on textile. For this particular paragraph, I'm trying to give you the idea that number of things Japan was now wanting to deal in. Right. So if India imported yarn from these countries, it was less surprising for not having their government and trade protective policy acted as a detrimental to the colonial Indian economy. And on the other hand, as mentioned, Japan's spinning and weaving industries kept improving their production graph. So it is like, what's going down is going up for the other side, right? So let's figure out three modern cotton spinning companies developed especially in Osaka, and these companies smartly collaborated with cotton yarn companies. So there is a tie-up. Now this is a good combination, right, to compete with Bombay's old established network and much before Bombay's British. So now it is just not Bombay which is getting targeted. Don't think about that, because we have Lancashire, Bombay, and then Osaka entering the trade game, right? So exporting cotton and yarn advantage was First World War for the indigenous industry. And this is evident from the fact that Japan imported Indian cotton on an average of 650,000 bales and in 1910 itself. And you can see that thereafter the figure goes to 8 70,000. So the Japanese consul was very happy. Of course, he will be happy, right? I mean, and then he expressed his happiness. So the correspondence, itself, the tone itself suggests that how Japan was flaunting around that particular advantage. And yeah, your Sifra has already mentioned about Yokohama's PC Bank, so she has made my job easier and not too much focus on it. But yes, I have something to add. How it worked. What is the money market now? It's just not textile; it's money market, right? So we have to now focus on how this YSB financed Japan's overseas trade. And one is that they opened branch in London. I had gone to Glasgow, and fortunately, I'm so happy that I collected their special business collection. Collected documents from their special business collection, where Finlay's records I have consulted, and in that YSB is there. So that is a private firm I'm talking about. So private collection also talks about YSB's presence, strong presence, and how they worked out in this network. So whether it was silk, that is Japanese silk export to US or to the US or France, or even raw cotton from India to sterling bill drawn in London provided the means of finance. So now they are looking at finance network to develop, that how it would be funding the entire trade game. And then of course YSB came. There were alliances, there were tie-up. That doesn't mean that everything was favorable for Japan, because there was this trade imbalance. They grappled with it, but they stayed on. That is where Japan has to study in a very micro way, that to tackle YSB opened a fund for exchange at Bombay Agency. So how now they are rooting out the networks. You have more companies switch to foreign transactions for the rapid purchase of raw cotton. And the Japanese buyers in the cotton umland negotiated kapas, which Sifra just mentioned about, that how umland is hinterland, foreland, the way you want to try to situate the terminology accordingly, right? So this is where, the whole entire network was formed. And here, let's bring back Bombay, because this is where, overlapping things we have to keep talking about. You just can't, one thing is happening, another network is also getting impacted by that. So not everything was gloomy for Bombay. As the First World War of 1914 and 18 afforded an enormous fillip to the Bombay and Indian mill industry, because Lancashire was struggling, or Liverpool was struggling, or Manchester was struggling, or even Glasgow, for example. So in the pre-war times, the United Kingdom alone was exporting about 3,000 million yards of cloth to India, and Indian mills were supplying only about 1,100 million yards of cloth. But the war was seriously dislocated, and the UK's cotton industry provided profitable opportunity to the mills. So let's talk about Ness Wadia, who gave this comment. Then came the war of 1914-18, which seriously curtailed cloth and yarn imports into India from the United Kingdom, which was supplying more than 50% of this country's requirements in the shape of cotton cloth. Here then was the opportunity for Indian mills. It also gave the opportunity to Japanese and Chinese mills to enter the Indian market by supplying cloth. So for a period of 5 or 6 years, large profits were earned and mill shares value rose to fantastic heights. Quickly, we move on to this now idea. The war ended in 1918, and the boom which resulted again lasted for a while. So I don't know whether is it, thinking about war and then profitability, but whatever be the idea, cotton mills in Bombay, common with mills in the centers of industry and other industries, made large profits. And it was mostly due to such profits that many mills in Bombay were able to carry on during the slump. So as I said, fluctuation is also to be noted in the terms of reserves. If they have reserves, they sustain, but they don't have it. So you can make out that Bombay continued to sustain through, right? And on the cessation of wars, the British industrialists now rushed. Of course, they were waiting for it, the way American rushed after the American Civil War. Now, after the First World War, you see British want to come back. Obviously, they would like to, because whatever temporary rupture which was created because of the war, they want to compensate. So during this transition, you see mills which changed hands at about this time fetched very high prices. So it is like, you will see number of documents, the original raw documents, if you see, there are many mills getting sold. Like I had seen Gold Mohar Mill, which was, the owner was Bhatia, but Finlays were partners. So now they are selling it off. So, and then the documents are so dry, so boring, but then you get some kind of idea out of it, because it's just talking about plain what negotiation, who are the stakeholders, all the legalities, this, that. The terminology is also quite dry, but then at the end you get satisfied that yes, there is a huge takeaway from them. So the boom lasted for of period 4 years after the end of war, but when the depression set in, Bombay's bad luck again, 1929, you all know. So that was a problem, and financial and physical mechanism could not adjust themselves with the trade. Japan over Bombay. This is the last part where you see now how Japan tries to dominate. And I have this argument. When Sifra was talking about, I got this other part of my conclusion here, like you can see randomly written here. But anyways, I'll just brush over this and come to that. That's very important, and I want you all to think about it. So 1922-37, Bombay textile industry struggled for survival. Okay, and Japanese stranglehold. Japan was like, okay, you are struggling, we are not going to allow you to breathe, So they had, as Sifra had mentioned, cheap labor, double shift working, efficient methods. Sorry, D is missing. And then Indian manufacturing rendered profitable. Then labor trouble. This is the way where you can have entire study got out of it, a separate study. Labor trouble, trade union, communist movement, red flag, and whatnot they are writing. The industry is also not happy with that situation. Of course, you all know, understand. And we, as much as we understand labor, we understand the other side. So it's a balance which we have to strike. We don't have to get overwhelmed by the idea of capitalism, right? But both the sides, right? So you have Swadeshi. I have a question here. I have a question to you people also. Do you think Swadeshi was really responsible? If I go by Bajaj and Birla, they went over to Bapu saying, Bapu, please explain and define what is Swadeshi, because people are not even buying from our mills. So that is where, if you want to see somewhere. But if we see Lokmanya Tilak, he had much ago said that dhoti, if it is manufactured from the mills, you can, why not go for it? So he had defined, because Swadeshi was originally his idea, right? So he had clearly defined that. But Gandhiji's perception of charkha and Swadeshi was getting little mixed with mills and all that. So anyways, I'm just throwing this question to you people. What do you think? Instead of me asking me, please answer this. So only mills with reserves could pull through. And finally, in 1937, then, just because Japanese domination was such that colonial government woke up from somewhere, and they got Noyes tariff board was appointed to safeguard the intrusion. And Japanese conscious pro-trade policies were also a problem. So British were annoyed with Yokohama General Chamber of Commerce. And actually they expressed this annoyance in their correspondence, and they granted, because, the Japanese were granting bounties to silk traders to take advantage over Bombay. And Bombay Chamber of Commerce was also like, why are you giving subsidies and all that? You are making the situation very tough. So you have Bombay, Japan in East Africa, where I started. I'm taking you back. So my point here is the argument which I was trying to seek is that Japan joined the network of Manchester, Lancashire, and Liverpool, Glasgow, and Bombay, and durable, vibrant, economical Japanese piece goods found market in East Africa, according to Jeremy Presthold. He has done a good research on this. And from Nyasaland to Uganda, sales of Japanese textile dented the longish British and Indian makes along with American. So you can see like how the circle which I covered in this talk happens. So the conclusion, I've just left it blank because there are many things we can conclude with, just not one conclusion will do, and not even provisional. I see some things like how Asian capitalism converged at one point and diverged because Japanese practices were different than Bombay's. Then they knew how to deal with the labor problems. I'm not saying that people in Bombay did not know, but the ideas were busted out at will in case of Japan. And then there are purchasing power, which was weak, negotiating power was a problem. Then you have China and India have their own domestic market. You all agree with that. But Japan has a limited market. So Japan has to look out. And because of that only, Japan somewhere or the other knows how to sustain through even in the toughest circumstance. And then there is one more thing which I never wanted to, of course, go in great detail, but then I have to mention, I can't resist. It was just not textile. The pearl trade, which was because of that, the capitalism in the Persian Gulf, Bombay, China network was getting entwined. Because of ecological crisis and depleting of pearl sources, pearl resources, that the trade was of course, it was witnessing its decline, and petrol also, oil was also now diverting the Arabs, right? So at this juncture, Japan came up with artificial pearls. Ivory trade banned. Japan came with that artificial ivory, so it's like, how are they now taking advantage over where Bombay discontinued and Japan took it over, right? And then Japan became a market. I mean, see, Bombay, what I want to say is, last note, Bombay's industrial capital fed industrialization of, or Bombay, or you can say Calcutta, Bombay Presidency, or entire Indian Peninsula fed the industrialization of Japan, and then it became a market for its industrial goods. And the port independence, the independence which they were talking about was after 47, shares industrial and technological fortunes back then. I mean, in some sense or the other, as far as technological advantage was concerned. So yes, yeah, Japanese, you saw how things were changing together. Bombay and Japan, of course, scripted a growth story of Asian capitalism in transoceanic network, and constructively influenced American and European stories of business and capitalism. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chaya.